Immersive audio used to mean choosing your format first and then choosing your tool. Surround panning, one tool. Object panning for Dolby Atmos, another tool. And if your project needed several output formats at once, you were jumping between windows, rebuilding your routing, and hoping nothing got lost in translation. Sequoia 26.5 changes that. The new Spatial Panner is one unified tool that handles every format from mono all the way up to Dolby Atmos and 22.2 setups. And it lets you see and control every single source feeding a bus simultaneously in real spatial context. That's what we are going to explore today. What the Spatial Panner is, how it works, and what it means for two very different real-world production scenarios. My name is Emanuel Hoisl, and I'm glad to show you around the new Spatial Panner in Sequoia 26.5. For this, I have prepared two tracks, one mono and one stereo track in this project, with some audio content, a military jet in mono and some beach atmosphere in stereo. Both feeding a stereo aux with some reverb, a stereo master, and at the same time a 5.1 surround bus. Let's now open the Spatial Panner with a right click from my red military jet track. And what we see now is the 2D panning view of our selected mono. You will notice right away that we see our source tracks in a list on the left side and our target buses, in this case our aux bus and the two masters on the right side of the panner. Each source carries its track color, a live peak meter, as well as solo and mute control. The real game changer, of course, is that you're not looking at one track at a time. If I add all tracks to be visible in our panner, we see the entire picture at once. This is arguably the most important thing here. We are kind of used to work on one source in isolation, whereas here the spatial relationships between all the sources are visible and adjustable from a single window. On the other hand, when a session gets busy, this eye symbol lets you hide sources that aren't relevant at the moment. Multi-selection is of course handled. The title of our Spatial Panner always indicates the current routing point, which is dependent on both the current source and the current target selection. As my mono source here is already routed to two targets, I can easily switch the panner's routing point, and you will immediately notice my 5.1 speaker layout after switching. The 2D view of the panner itself can display three possible perspectives: front, top, and side. Each gives you a different plane of the sound field. For most cases, top view is where you'll spend your time. Now, we can, of course, also add the 3D view, which is basically a cube view, giving us a more comprehensive representation. For this, I'll first add a new surround master. So let's choose a Dolby 3D 916 layout. Here we are. From the Spatial Panner, I can now route the mono track also to my new master. Here we go. So for this mono track, I've now those targets available. I see my sources for each target when switching. So you see that my 5.1 master is also fed by the aux1. I could add this also for my 16-channel Dolby master. And so on. So even routing capabilities are implemented in this new panner. Okay, back to our 3D view. I switched this on here. You will notice this cube here gives us much better orientation in 3D space. The small screen here always indicates the front of the room. The colored outline and the plane indicate the currently selected 2D view and its associated third axis. Here, the height axis. One huge feature is this chain symbol here. It indicates a link status between the multiple outputs. When active, all my panning adaptations will be synchronized to my targets. If, however, you wish a separate panning for one of your targets, just unlink that and all panning or automation will only affect the selected routing. Let's have a quick tour of the other key controls before we move into the use cases. So first, we have different modes for our sources. The stereo panning mode is the conventional panning to stereo buses. The new standard mode is used for spatial panning. That's the one we just saw. And we still have the matrix mode for applying dedicated levels to dedicated speakers. And then a new mode is the plugin mode for special workflows where you want to bring in third-party panning tools or upmixing tools. We have, of course, for each mode and format panning presets in order to save and recall positions, useful for recurring setups or for quick comparisons. Then, on the panner itself, we have this option of a speaker snap, which will snap a source to exact speaker positions in your configuration. This is useful when you want an element locked precisely to a specific speaker or to the main speaker layer, rather than floating between positions. Below you see the parameters for each axis, be it X, Y, or Z. We also have the center amount, also known as divergence. It controls how much of the signal is anchored to the center channel versus being spread across the left and right channels. The LFE level determines how much signal is sent to the LFE channel, independently of the main speaker feeds. For stereo sources routed to surround buses, we also see the stereo handle. This allows to reposition a stereo source as a single object rather than adjusting each channel individually. The spread control determines how much of the sound field a source occupies from a point source to a full-width stereo image. And finally, symmetry. Here we have three modes: the parallel, the angle, and the independent mode. These control how the two channels of a stereo pair behave when you move the source. So, parallel keeps the stereo image aligned as a unit, while angle keeps it oriented towards the listening position. Independent mode lets you position each channel freely and completely independent. The new Spatial Panner really adapts to whatever your target bus is configured for. Route the output to stereo, 5.1, 7.1.4, or to ADM objects. The Spatial Panner updates accordingly. No tool switching, no format-specific plugin, no guessing which tool you need. Let's put all that into practice. I have here a German film orchestra recording, multitrack already mixed to stereo, and now the label wants a Dolby Atmos version on top. Here's how that works. That's our session. We have everything a classical recording involves. The main microphones, an A-B pair, and a decker tree with outriggers, the surround left and right for the overall image, as well as, of course, lots of spot microphones for each orchestral section. For rights reasons, we will mute audio in this section. Now, the stereo mix is finished and approved. It's on the stereo master bus here, and we're not going to touch it. What we need to add is a 7.1.4 bus for the Atmos delivery, routed in parallel. So I will add a 7.1.4 bus, choose it from the Dolby 3D section. Go. That's fine. And now route all my source tracks to it as well. Let's select those tracks here and with a control key to multiple output selection. So all those tracks will feed both the stereo master and our new 3D surround bus. When opening the Spatial Panner, all my sources are already there, colored, metered, positioned. The stereo master is untouched, but the 7.1.4 bus now is active in parallel. Both can be monitored independently, and all my sources are already linked to both targets. The whole routing work is already done. So in the top view, I can choose to view the whole orchestra at once. I will place for the 7.1.4 bus a few of the main microphones to more interesting positions. So let me move with auto snap active, left and right riggers to the side speakers, of course, surround left and right to the rear speakers. And I could, for instance, move the A-B pair to the top, so they not interfere with my left-right microphones. And by the way, despite the fact that my surround left and right signals are linked in position also for my stereo master, the Y-axis information will be ignored for feeding the stereo master. So only the X-axis information is relevant. So the spot microphones are placed to match the real stage layout. Strings, then the woodwinds on the center left, the brass to the back right. In the Spatial Panner, I really can see the relationships between all these sources. I can verify at a glance that what's in the tool matches what was on the real stage. For microphones that should be locked to a specific speaker rather than float between positions, Speaker Snap locks them to the exact speaker location. No guessing, no drift. Now, why not take the room microphones, the surround left and right, so the recordings of the hall's acoustic, and move them into the height layer as well. The reverb of the whole, that sense of acoustic space above and around you, now comes from the height speakers. In the 3D view, I can see the full picture with the orchestra at floor level, the room around it, and above. Height and depth visible and adjustable in one view. Effect signals or solo instruments are cases where stereo and surround may totally differ. In the stereo mix, they might remain folded into the left-right image, but in Atmos I want them overhead, which is the entire point of the height layer. So I can break, for instance, for my Glockenspiel solo, the link for the source on the Atmos target only, and adjust its position independently. And move it up, maybe even place it right above the listener. Now the stereo mix remains exactly as approved, whereas the Atmos version gets the height layer that makes it genuinely immersive. I have two mixers, one project, and the stereo session is never at risk. Now this is looking very good, but in order to actually export the surround mix as Dolby Atmos export file, I will need to pass this through Sequoia's internal ADM editor. It shows an error because currently nothing is addressed to the ADM feed. I will now create a direct speaker object, which is often also referred as a bed, from my current track selection, which is the surround bus. And we see now the ADM editor correctly interprets this bus with the corresponding speaker positions. And from here, I can just open my Dolby Atmos renderer. So here we go. When done, I can export this, or from the export dialog, where I can select the master I want to export. So this could be the ADM renderer output or my stereo master containing my original mix. The second scenario is a setting for an immersive radio drama. Dialogue for two characters, atmospheres. The first decision is always what's a bed and what's an object. Beds are gel-based. They fill the room evenly. Objects are freely positionable, so anything with a precise location in the room. Objects can also contain additional metadata. I'll set up a 7.1.4 bed to feed the renderer and add the dialogue as individual ADM objects. Autofill takes care of the routing automatically. So this is the other project. My clips are already leveled, but before starting with the panning, let me set up the Dolby renderer so that you can hear the binauralized output of what I'm doing. So let's go with Dolby Atmos. And when choosing autofill, you will see that Sequoia finds quite a logical way to feed the ADM renderer with the right type of content. We see our 4 dialogue tracks, all in mono, 2 characters, 2 language versions each, Those are recognized as independent ADM objects. And then two bands recognized from the current mixer routine. So we have a 5-channel bus that is generated from an interleaved file, this one. That's static in terms of automation and feeding the master and upmix rule. So this wind ambience goes directly to the 7.1.4 Dolby bus, as well as a 7.1.4 ambience bus containing a few elements from my sound library. And what is missing here now is the reverb bus. Basically an aux bus with Sequoia's native 3D reverb. I can simply select this track and say add as direct speaker, which is a bed from the current track selection. And here it is. We see it has recognized the correct channel format. So let me call the Atmos renderer on my existing 7.1.4 bus. I see all defined fields appear on the left side with settings in the middle section. For this example, I will activate the binauralizer on the headphone output. This will help us to hear some of the immersive panning on headphones. Of course, in my monitoring section, I will need to define this as a source. Good. Then let's start panning. If I open the panner for one of my 4 dialogue tracks, I will see that I have a dedicated panning target, which is the Atmos object that is defined in my ADM editor here. You will also notice that I have not the speaker position anymore labeled on my panner, but pure positioning data. So characters don't have to sit center. 2 people in conversation can face each other. One left front, put it here. One right front with the listener between them. And because every source is visible together in the spatial panel, let me show all dialogue tracks. Those relationships are always readable. This is especially useful for my German track, where I can just place those versions at the same position as the English character. Now, let's give this a try. It's just solo. The 2.
Tides coming in. Another 20 minutes.
And we hear the
would have been gone.
conversation taking place.
Careless doesn't bury a body under driftwood, Lisa.
No, careless doesn't.
Sounds good. Now let's add the atmosphere around them. I've here those funny few elements. And let's build the whole scene as one connected picture. So where is my seashore? The seashore sits front right. Okay, we'll narrow this down a bit and switch to angle mode. Put this here. Down my church bells. Less wider. Angle mode as well. Let's put them here. So a bit of a opposite direction. Yeah. And of course, we also have seagulls. This could sit much more as a point source. And then put above us. Up. Okay. Here we go. Maybe now add some movement. Those little seagulls to introduce the scene. Why not make them fly over our heads? I have already given them a bit of height. Just put the track on touch automation and drag the source through the spatial view. And you'll notice the movement gets recorded in the timeline. Here we are. One tool, every format, every source in spatial context. The Spatial Panner keeps the entire picture in view and keeps your workflow in one place. My name is Emanuel Hoisl for Boris FX. I hope to see you again very soon. Take care and see you next time.